Hollywood's new favorite golden boy is back on the big screen. That's right, Glen Powell leads this movie we're going to be taking a look at today. There's been this growing trend of Eat the Rich movies popping up recently with stuff like The Menu and Triangle of Sadness. Regardless if these movies are good or not, it can be hard to find them genuine whenever they're made by primarily pretty prestigious people. It's usually a pot calling the kettle black with this sort of situation, which is how I felt whenever I would see the trailers for this movie. And this movie that we're going to be looking at today is called How to Make a Killing, directed by John Patton Ford. The movie stars Glen Powell, Margaret Qualley, Jessica Henwick, and Ed Harris. The movie follows a man who is disowned at birth by his obscenely wealthy family. The blue-collar Beckett Redfellow will stop at nothing to reclaim his inheritance, no matter how many relatives stand in his way. I did a little digging with this movie after watching it and became increasingly more surprised to find out that he had originally thought that this movie was just a straight-up remake of the 1949 movie Kind Hearts and Coronets, which, looking at it from today's lens, sounds like some Midwest emo song title. Allegedly, this movie is only heavily inspired by the 1949 movie. However, when you look at both plots side by side, it really makes you wonder, especially considering that this movie was never advertised as a remake, which I suppose is for better or worse, as you get a lot of people, me included, that will constantly complain about the abundance of remakes and sequels and etceteras that are going on in Hollywood. Now, I didn't have that information going into this. I mainly checked it out due to the premise sounding interesting, and I do like Glen Powell from the movies that I've seen him in so far. So just how is the movie exactly? Well, first of all, I want to talk about the performances, starting with Glen Powell, who's known for roles in movies like Top Gun Maverick and Twisters. I thought he did good in his role. Despite the concept of this movie initially sounding pretty dark, it is mainly a comedy, albeit a black comedy, so Powell's comedic chops pay off well here, as certain line readings can lead into some pretty well done comedic timing that knocked a chuckle out of me. Along with this, he oozes his usual charisma that he's been making himself known for. There's multiple times where it feels like he can talk himself out of any situation with such ease and slickness, which pays off. And on top of this, given the background which they give his character, you can't help but sympathize with the guy. While I don't think this is the best role by any means from him, he definitely did a good job and is further proving himself as a great leading man. This is probably what happens when you spend enough time with Tom Cruise. Margaret Qualley is in this too. She's known for roles in movies like Poor Things and The Substance. This has nothing to do with her acting quality in particular, but I fucking hated her character in this movie. She's written to be so incredibly unlikable, and Qualley did a good job at making the most of really getting under your skin. And yes, by the way, if you're curious, she does do her lip bite gag in this. By golly, you can count on that. I don't know why or who decided that she needs to do this in pretty much every movie she's in. Maybe it's in her contract at this stage, but hey, at least she's able to poke fun at it, am I right? Even if the rest of us are getting pretty sick of it. She did well at conveying her bitchy nature every time she was on screen, that any viewer would grow increasingly enraged by the way she interacts with every character alone. Jessica Henwick plays the main love interest in this movie. She's known for roles in movies like Glass Onion and Cuckoo, and is known for a role in the TV show Game of Thrones. At first, I didn't know what to make of her in this movie, so that is more down to the script. She does well at conveying different emotions through her eyes, which makes you guess constantly on what she's thinking at first when she's introduced, and as the film progresses, for the rest of her screen presence that she has, she does a good job of portraying this person that is in love, yet knows maybe not everything is all that it seems, and you easily sympathize with her from the way she gives certain looks throughout the latter half of this. Ed Harris is in this movie for a little bit too. He's known for roles in movies like The Truman Show and A History of Violence. Despite him having limited screen time, he makes the most of the presence that he brings. Harris always delivers when it comes to being menacing and doesn't change here, as he does well at making you hang on to his every word while always wondering what he's thinking through the way he delivers his lines while looking at other characters in the movie. Definitely wish he could have been in the movie more, but for the time he is there, he does a good job. Topher Grace shows up in this movie and plays one of the relatives in the family. He's known for having roles in movies like Spider-Man 3 and Under the Silver Lake. I just wanted to mention him for how silly his role is. He's technically only in one segment of the movie, but he truly makes the most of the time that he's there, hamming up his performance wholeheartedly in the best way possible. For me, he stole all the scenes he was in whenever he was on screen. Moving on to the actual plot of this thing, I thought the way the story unfolds for the most part was done well. The movie is mainly told through Glen Powell's character telling the plot of the movie as if it was a story to another character, which is used as a vehicle for narration throughout most of the runtime. But this gets a little skewered towards the end, especially the last like 5 minutes, as from the way he says certain things it makes you wonder who he's saying it to, as what he is narrating has caught up to the present, while the character he was initially telling the story to isn't present anymore. I thought this was a weird choice to keep this going with that in mind. I do mainly have a lot of problems with the ending of this, which I can't fully get into due to spoilers of course, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The first act or two of this movie follows a slightly repetitive formula of Glen Powell finding one of his relatives, sneaking into their lives, and thinking of ways to take them out. And honestly, from the way it was being handled, I didn't mind the formulaic nature, but obviously the screenwriters were a little worried as the latter half of the second act rushes through a lot of his encounters with the other relatives, which makes them feel a bit more detached from the audience. You're not exactly meant to feel bad for these characters, but it was odd to see some of them have more development than others. I do think the script is a little messy, especially with how at times the women in this movie are written. The director did write this movie, so with that in mind, having it written by a man does make sense from some of the traits that the women in this movie have. It basically equates to them just being unfaithful. Some only seem to be in the pursuit of money, which lessens a lot of sympathy you could try earn by the end of the movie. This is slightly given to the main love interest character, but thankfully she's endearing enough to where you get over this fact. But a lot of this is shoved into Margaret Qualley's character, as like I said, she's extremely unlikable, which is a shame because by the time we get to the third act she becomes more involved with the story, and from her involvement there are certain things that happen that left a sour taste in my mouth. I think the point of the ending in this movie is to leave you a little dissatisfied, but I'm sorry, I don't think that makes your movie smarter than it thinks it is. It more so serves as a kind of infuriating type of ending for me, at least. Next I want to talk about the cinematography, which was done by Todd Van Hazel, who's done cinematography for movies like Hustlers and Blow the Man Down. I thought this movie looked pretty good all the way through. There isn't too many uses of unique camera techniques, but it's still serviceable as it made for an engaging watch. Some stylish choices were made, like slow zoom in and outs, which reminded me a lot of 70s movies that would do the same thing. I thought the movie was color graded well, which thankfully seems to be happening a lot with current movies, but maybe also has to do with lighting on top of it, as there's a good few nice uses of lighting, especially in a scene draped in nothing but red, and a moment near the end of the first act where light is used to reveal something in darkness, which I got a kick out of. I briefly also want to mention the music in this movie. The original score in this was composed by Emile Mazzari, who's done music for movies like Minari and Kajillionaire. I thought the music complemented a lot of the scenes that they were used in well. There's a good use of synth music in this, which I thought was pretty good. The movie also features a pretty good soundtrack too, with songs from the likes of Heaven 17, Shirley Ellis, and Juca Chavez. A lot of these songs I thought were chosen well and fitted the scenes that they were used in. Overall, I thought this movie was a good time. While I haven't seen the original movie that it's based on, I'm sure since it's a relatively unheard of movie that this remake could have been serviceable. Then again, are they ever? I think this is modernized enough for it to stand on its own for sure. For most of the runtime, the humor works, and I think to an extent the twists and turns that come into the latter half of this movie make for an entertaining watch. I just don't know how much rewatchability this could gain in the long run, despite it being pretty fun for the most part. Like I said in the beginning, I do think to an extent these movies, if they're funded by Hollywood, tends to be a bit hypocritical. What's more surprising is that apparently one of the original working titles for this movie, which has been around for quite a while as it's one of the scripts that was in the blacklist, was called Rothschild. I wonder why they would have had the name change. I'm giving How to Make a Killing 3.5 stars. While I don't think anyone is at their peak here, there are still some pretty good performances, and Glen Powell is great as the lead. I really do think with each passing movie, he's proving his star power more and more, and it's great to see. It's stylish for a good majority of the runtime, which is surely elevated by its pretty well done editing that assisted a lot of the very good pace throughout the movie, which had me engaged from start to finish. It's pretty inoffensive, unless you're some rich asshole of course, and while I think it does have decent amount of plot holes, I feel like this can be overlooked if you turn your brain off a little bit. That being said, I don't think this is an extremely done movie. It's simply here to provide a good time. This movie is currently running in theaters, so I would recommend as soon as you can to go check this one out at your local cinema, as like every other movie, this one deserves to be watched on the big screen.